What's up, party people? I'm Pony Lawson, and this is Tattoo Critiques. Once again, welcome back to my favorite place for tattoo breakdowns, if I do say so myself. And if you're a fan, the best way to support this channel is by hitting the subscribe button below. As many of you know, this is where we break down tattoos sent in by you, the viewer. Whether you're an artist, collector, or just a lowly apprentice, we like to talk about them all. And this week is all about collectors. And the first one sent in is from Autumn with this some kind of anime tattoo. And even though I don't know who it is, this is a very solid tattoo, especially at first glance. I love the line weights this thing has. It's got some thicker parts running into thinner parts, and I love the way that they taper off and give everything a nice shape. Another thing you'll notice is most of these lines aren't that smooth. Rather, they've got a lot of ridges and some sharpness, just adding some really nice strength to the overall piece. And having those nice black, thick outlines next to those bright oranges and yellows just makes for a really nice contrast. And while we're on the color, let's talk about that some more. Since yellow is a contrasting color to purple, I think that was a very wise choice on the artist's part. It's also nice to see these glowing orange pieces, as it just adds another layer of interest. And going back to the background, I usually see a lot of people get really lazy when it comes to that part of the tattoo. They'll just kind of blend it up into nothing, not really giving it the time it needs. And even though it's not that detailed, that dark purple up top seems to have some sort of movement, and the way it blends to that light lavender and then all the way to that white is just very nice. Something else I'm a fan of is the hair and the way those dark shadows meet those light highlights. And that carries throughout the entire tattoo. In the wing and in the face. Again, it just makes for a very stark contrast. So Autumn, I think you got a solid tattoo out of this. If I loved anime and I knew who the hell this was, I'd be stoked to wear it. Thank you so much for sending that over. Up next, we've got one sent in from Logan, and Logan got a Wolverine tattoo. How fitting, with his name being Logan and all. And with this one, I don't think you made out quite as well as Autumn, because there's a lot of strange things happening here. My first question is, what's up with his head? Old cone head looking ass.
Mabs, unacceptable.
I mean, I'm not really well versed with the Wolverine DC, is that DC, Marvel? I don't know.
Marvel Universe.
Same. But I've seen Wolverine enough to know that he doesn't have ears quite like Batman, because these things are thicker than the day shift at an Omaha Gentlemen's Club, if you know what I'm saying. But this whole thing is just kind of wonky. There's a lot of technical errors that I see all over the place. If we start at the bottom of the rose and removed Wolverine completely, this would just be a cheap looking tattoo. The black shade should be a lot darker, and it should blend to a nice smooth gradient of red. What you've got here is rather patchy. If the artist was trying to make a traditional looking rose, and I'm assuming that's what they were going for, you gotta keep in mind the rule of thirds. And I've covered this so many times in previous videos if you wanna go check those out, or I'll leave it right here. Go ahead and pause it if you want to take time to read it. But one of the biggest things when it comes to the rule of thirds is the use of skin tone, and this has none. It's just wall-to-wall, patchy color, just flattening this thing out. And even when we come over to those leaves, again, there's just no solid black shading and there's no skin tone. And that same tone of green just makes everything really drab and flat. And I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news. But wait, there's more. It was also a poor choice to use the same color background as they used in the rose. Again, it just flattens everything out. It really pushes that rose to the background when it should be standing in front. And I think it would have been okay if they didn't use all that red on the left side of the arm all the way down to the rose. It would have balanced things out a bit more. And as I mentioned before in the previous tattoo about the use of background, this is exactly what I was talking about. It's just thrown in there, and it seemed like they were trying to just use it to fill space. And when it comes to those blades, they really don't look shiny. The checkered pattern was just a weird choice. Maybe if one side were shaded and the other side were left skin tone or white, it would have looked a lot nicer. And is that a hand or a sock puppet?
Bloody hell.
There's just so many things wrong with this one. Some lines don't connect, some lines look like they've been buried in there, and overall it just looks rushed. Again, I'm sorry. Please don't hate me, but thank you so much for sending that over. The next collector submission is sent over from Allan Lee. And Allan, you sent over both a fresh and healed image, so let's check out the fresh one. And right away, this thing is badass. There's a lot going on that really keeps your eye moving around the entire piece, and everything is done so well. If we start with the composition, it is incredible. It looks like everything is right where it needs to be. And going from the ankle all the way to the upper thigh is not an easy task. This thing is well thought out, and it doesn't look like the artist cut any corners on any of this. The skull has nice grainy detail, while the face has these super smooth shades. You can tell they knew exactly what they were going for. If you were to take out any individual section and tattoo just that, it would still be a great tattoo. But managing to transition these pieces so seamlessly is quite impressive. I'm also a fan of the opaque grays used in this tattoo. Up in those triangles around that eye, and even in each side of the face, it just keeps everything nice and separated. It's also nice to see that the artist didn't overdo it when it comes to the whites, whereas most artists would almost use those as a crutch. I'd say 90% of the lighter tones that you see here is just skin showing through, saving those whites for the parts that matter most, making those areas more impactful, like the eyes, little pieces in the skull, and those beads. Again, showing that the artist has full control of this tattoo from beginning to end. Now when it comes to the healed photo, just as impressive, if not more so. Because everything is still here, everything is still nice and dark, and this thing healed smooth as butter. If I were the artist, I would be more than thrilled with how this thing healed up because it really doesn't look any different. And that's the goal. So Allan, solid composition, solid heal, solid tattoo altogether. Thank you so much for sending that over. Real quick guys, I want to talk about protecting your tattoos, because summer's right around the corner and there's not much more damaging to your tattoos than the sun. But Mad Rabbit's got you covered. Now all of you have heard me talk about Mad Rabbit and all the awesome products that they offer, but they also offer sunscreen. So head on over to madrabbit.com and grab some for yourself. And be sure to use code PONY20 to save 20% off your entire order and protect your tattoos. Up next, we've got a couple tattoos sent over from JoeDoy, the first one being an image of Thundercat in Naruto cosplay. Now I like the concept of this tattoo. I think the idea of the mashup is pretty dope. I like how you've got the clouds from Naruto in the background and in the foreground. It just adds something a little extra. And I also really like how you've got this little see-through cloud in the front, just adding to that cool factor. This tattoo's got some nice little detail in there as well when it comes to the tattoos and the jewelry. When it comes to the details, especially in the face, they don't look as rock solid as they could. Like in the nose, the teeth, and even in that right eye. There are some saturation issues here, especially in the rear left cloud and even in his jacket. It just comes off a bit patchy. The beard itself does come off a little rushed, and even the white highlights on the cheeks just seem a bit out of place. I just think if the artist took a little more time when it comes to those finer details, this thing would go from a good tattoo to a rock solid tattoo. And I know I'm probably letting a few things slide here, but sometimes I think the idea or design trumps the technical application. Sometimes. Or maybe I'm just in a good mood. Who knows? But let's check out the healed version. Okay, and just as I expected, we kinda lost a lot of those details, especially when it comes to the tattoos and parts of the beard. Sometimes when we've got lines that are too close together, they end up blurring together. And this is a great example of just that. If it's not done with finesse, it can end up blurring together. Sometimes things are better simplified to set it up for a better heal. Like even when it comes to the see-through part of the cloud, it doesn't look as crispy as it did. And I think that's because of a lack of contrast. You'll also notice in the clouds that it's not as saturated as it was in the fresh photo, but red can be a tricky color, because sometimes we're noticing irritation or even blood when we're packing in those colors where we think it's solid red, but it's actually not. So it can be deceiving. And we did happen to lose those white highlights in the cheeks, which I think is okay. The little scar here is something that Joe did mention in the email. This happened after the tattoo was healed, and now he's left with no color. But this is still a fun tattoo, it's a cool design, and you sent over one more that I think is worth taking a look at. And it's this little Gengar with an MF Doom helmet. And again, a wonderful mashup, another dope design, and this one seems to be well executed. It's not overly done with the details, where I think this one would last a bit longer than the previous one. You did mention that this one was done by the same artist as well, and I can kind of tell because there is some patchy areas. And that's especially true when we get up next to these edges of the black lines. There's just a little bit of skin showing through between the color and those lines. So if this one is anything like those clouds, we can expect a little bit of fallout. Man, where have I seen those checker patterns before?
My name is Wolverine.
So Joe, you got a couple of really cool tattoos, although the execution falls somewhere in the middle of the road, but as I've said before, I love the designs, I love the ideas, and that's what keeps tattooing fun. So thank you so much for sending those over. All right, up next, we've got a couple tattoos sent in from Tasoula out of Western Australia. And Tasoula, the first one you sent over is this, what you call an evolution on your arm. I thought you just misspelled something in the email, but here we are. Yeah, it definitely seems like a lot of anime tattoos today, but I'm okay with it. I'm learning something new. Now, I do like the idea of this evolution tattoo. I think it's rather chaotic, but I think it's supposed to be. The colors in this tattoo are bright and vivid, but I do notice a couple areas where there are some saturation issues. Especially with that darker one, you can kind of see a lot of skin tone showing through. Even those lighter purples, and Lord knows I struggle with light purples myself. It is a rather difficult color to use. However, I do think it could be applied a little bit better than it is. One thing that I did notice rather quickly is there's not a lot of black shading in these tattoos, and that's something that can really help color stay bright and vivid over time. The artist did use some tones for shadows, but not having that black in there is just really going to hinder the heal. Hinder the heal, hinder the heal. Just adding a little black here and there is really going to help these colors pop, and again help with the longevity. I do realize that there's black in the background, but you gotta put that black in the characters as well, and that's something I notice a lot of tattooers are scared of, because it can be scary. But when you color on top of those black shades, it's not going to look black, it's only going to enrich those colors, and it will honestly make those color gradients way smoother. If you want to learn a little bit more about that, you can check out this video from Gian right here, as he does go a little bit more into it. You did send over a Vegeta as well. I know Dragon Ball Z.
You lying?
I know Dragon Ball Z.
I like you, man. You lie a lot.
I mean, maybe it helps that they mentioned that in the email, but whatever. I know my anime guys. Is that his first name? Something vagina? Meaty vagina? Meaty Vegeta? Anyway, I do love the bright popping colors of this tattoo, and it does look like they used a little more black than the previous one. All that being said, just like with the last tattoo, the saturation does look a little bit patchy, and that's especially true at the bottom of the tattoo where all those blacks and dark blues are. I do want to say that the composition in this tattoo is pretty great. You can see the Evolution tattoo in the background, and they tied it together really well. So good job to the artist there. But you sent over healed images, so let's check those out. Alright, now this is something I want to address, because this does seem to be a reoccurring theme. A client will send in a healed photo as well as the photo from the tattoo artist. We can't expect a client photo to look as good as a tattooer's photo, because clients aren't professional photographers, most of the time. And a lot of times, tattooers don't know how to use the equipment they've got. As artists, it's our responsibility to showcase our work as true as to what it looks like in real life. But more often than not, tattooers are using their equipment to boost their colors and saturation and details more so than they actually are. And when it comes to the client photo, sometimes they look a bit more dull than they actually are. The truth is somewhere in the middle. Now, I'm not saying this artist in particular did that, but there is an obvious difference when it comes to these healed and fresh photos. So let's look at this healed image and just judge it as we can see it. The first thing I see is these colors are a lot more dull than that fresh photo, obviously. And all that solid black that was in the background and between all these characters is no longer solid black. I would call that 50% gray. So if I had to guess, it was never truly solid black to begin with. Now this is 2.5 years old, and I don't know how often you're in the sun, and that could be a factor, but as it sits, it's just a stark contrast from what I saw before. If you're gonna be out in the sun, you wanna grab some sunscreen and apply it to your tattooed areas. You don't have to put it everywhere, but you wanna protect your investment. And as I was saying before, adding even just a little bit of black shading in these characters and not just the colors would have really helped you out. Because even if all these colors were to fall out, you'd still have some nice structure, giving it a nice shape. Now when we look over to the healed Vegeta tattoo, the same thing could be said. This one seems to have lost a lot of color as well, and it looks like this is on the inside of your arm, so I highly doubt it sees as much sun as the outside of your arm. So that kinda tells me that these colors were never that rich to begin with, or packed in there that well. That dark area at the bottom, as predicted, also lightened up quite a bit. And if I had to guess, it was never as dark as it should have been in the beginning. So to sum it all up, I'm not trying to shit on your tattoos, because the composition is great and the attention to detail is there. But I have a hard time believing that all these colors are that dull because you took this picture in bad lighting. I would bet that if we took a picture of your healed tattoo in the same room, with the same setup, with the same lighting, that we would still see a drastic difference. And again, just to reiterate, it is our responsibility as tattooers to set our clients up with real expectations. The more we edit our photos and manipulate our equipment, we push our tattoos further away from reality. So what are we to believe? Did the tattooer oversaturate and edit their photo? Did the client take a bad photo? Or is it somewhere in between? You guys let me know in the comments below. But thank you Tasoula for sending these over and allowing me to talk about it. Well, what was my favorite tattoo this week? There were a lot of really good submissions, so this one was a tough one. But I think we checked all the boxes when it came to Allan Lee's submission. The composition, the shading, and the technical ability are really on another level. But most importantly, did you see how this thing healed? You can't argue with that. I think whoever Allan got this tattoo by is an absolute master when it comes to his craft, and he should be showing off these healed tattoos if he's not already. You can really tell that the artist took their time not only in the execution, but everything leading up to the application. The design, the stencil, and putting everything on the body right where it belongs to keep your eyes moving throughout the entire thing. So Allan, excellent tattoo. I couldn't give you more praise. This thing is awesome. And congratulations once again on being my favorite this week. Alright, before I let you kitties go, I want to feature an artist who I think you should all be following. And since we had an abundance of anime and comic book style tattoos, I thought it was only appropriate that I shared with you an artist who does that oh so well. And that artist is Ivan Flores out of Mexico. And since everyone knows I know little to nothing about anime, I'm only going on technical application and composition alone. And I don't even think knowledge on anime really matters when it comes to Ivan's work, because these tattoos are absolutely stunning. He uses the right amount of blacks and dark shading to make sure that his tattoos really pop and stand the test of time. The control he has when it comes to his line weights makes it look like it's coming from an actual anime or comic book. The color saturation is beautiful, from the clothing to the facial tones and even those lighter blue and purple colors. He knows all the little tricks to make something feel very dynamic. From gray wash outlines to white highlights. It's subtle, but it's impactful. It doesn't matter if you like anime or not, these things are going to catch your eye. So do yourself a favor, head on over to his page, give him a follow, and let him know I sent you. Alright, that's going to be it for the critiques this week. I want to thank everybody for sticking around, and thank you so much to the collectors who sent in your work. Remember, we put out tattoo content every week, so please hit that subscribe button because you don't want to miss it. Until next week, see ya!